Mr. Taylor, did you think you were coming to a basketball court today? That's a dog that won't hunt. That's like telling me that, I closed the door after the horse was out of the barn. I got here initially basically as a protest. My dad had a stalker, Bill Bailey, and as they were getting ready to arraign Mr. Bailey, he addressed the court and he says, if it pleases the court, Your Honor, I've known Mr. Bailey for a long time. Mr. Bailey's not a bad person, but he does have some significant mental health problems. And I am here to tell you that I'm not interested in seeing him punished, but I am interested in seeing him helped. Judge Mulcahy scooted back in his chair, crossed his arms on his chest, looked out at my dad and said, what do I look like, some kind of social worker? Well, you would have to know my dad, because at that moment it was on. As soon as I threw my hat into the ring, people were coming from everywhere to tell me their Judge Mulcahy stories and about, how they had been mistreated, and asking what they could do to help or where they could make a donation. And it was at that point that I said, oh my goodness, I could actually win this. I was not really urged to go into the field of law. My dad's position always was, whatever you decide you want to do, just make sure that you do it the best that you possibly can. But we didn't have, as I recall, a lot of conversation about it. I just remember that he was pleased that I wanted to pursue it. I enrolled in Cleveland Marshall College of Law in 1969 and went there nights, about 4 days a week, and worked full-time for the Ohio Bell Telephone Company, where I landed a job in their initial management development program, and spent the next 5 years working for the Bell. What's amazing to me now is that I was able to pay for law school out of my pocket. I landed a job working with John T. Corrigan as an assistant county prosecutor, and my dad had suggested that and actually had called Mr. Corrigan to ask if I could interview. And of course it was really a prestigious thing to do at that time. My dad's position was that if you want to be a trial lawyer, if you want to be a litigator, the best place for you to learn those skills is in the county prosecutor's office. So you went up against the best. So I learned a whole lot more while I was in the county prosecutor's office from the cases that I lost than from the cases that I won.
His dad was a very distinguished gentleman in our community. He had the respect of everybody, and his closest friend was Louis Stokes, and they were the pioneers that opened the door for Earl Turner and Ron Adrine.
Russell Adrine was a lot like Judge Adrine in that the passion and commitment for public service and community service was clear and played out in a lot of different ways. Russ Adrine was involved with the RTA, but he was involved with many organizations, a real leader in Cleveland, and Judge Adrine has followed in his footsteps. It's in the DNA of the Adrine family, I guess, because what you see Judge Adrine do in this community is second to none.
I was at the Bar Association back in the 80s, and Russ was very active on a lot of our professional committees and also our public service outreach program. So I actually met Judge Adrine through his father. His father was a great guy and obviously a mentor and also an inspiration for Judge Adrine. Judge Adrine has picked up where his father left off.
It's a family, an entire family of people that were committed to social causes in the community, outspoken people, and involved with a number of things, church, NAACP, etc., etc. His father, Russell, was a noted attorney in town. He worked for the county commissioners for a while. So just a well-respected family, and out of that came Ron.
I initially came to know him when we both worked to help put together Norman Minor Bar Association, which is the African American Bar Association here in Cleveland. And as you may know, later he was president of that bar association. So I knew him early on, before he became a judge on the municipal court.
Mr. Gresham, I was born tonight, but it wasn't last night. This is your first appearance in front of me as a probation violator. If you come back in front of me as a probation violator, it's going to be a really short visit. It'll be take him to jail. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. I spent about 2.5 years as an assistant county prosecutor. I pretty much had learned about as much as I was going to learn as a county prosecutor at that juncture. And my dad had a thriving practice and decided that he would like for me to join him. And so I came out and I went into practice with him. In the middle of 1978, my dad got a telephone call from Congressman Stokes, who was his good friend, and at the time the chair of the House Select Committee on Assassinations that was investigating the deaths of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and President John F. Kennedy. And they were investigating all of the assassination theories that had grown up over time as it related to both of those. And the purpose of the inquiry was to determine whether any of them had any legs. And if not, to debunk the ones that did not, so that people would recognize that they were just that. They were just urban myths or theories. The purpose for me coming down there was to help them put together the public hearings. They had been, in response to his request, unable to find qualified black prosecutors anywhere across the country. I talked it over with my dad. We both saw it as an opportunity, one, to be a part of history, and two, just to burnish my credentials, as a lawyer. Probably my major accomplishment down there was I got the opportunity to do a complete top-to-bottom review of Dr. King's purported assassin, James Earl Ray, and his guilty plea, which was carried out in Memphis, Tennessee, after he was captured. There were days when I would go in and get there about 6 o'clock in the morning and not leave until 2 o'clock the following morning. I still kind of get a chill when I think about it. I actually, I know it sounds hokey, but felt sometimes as though Dr. King was looking over my shoulder, and it was like, you have to get this right. There are too many people depending on this being done appropriately, competently, objectively, and in a way that people will be able to accept the outcome. And so at those moments, no matter how tired you were, you got a second win, and you went at it again. But there were times when I really did just feel like he was in the room. My term started on January the 4th, 1982. I remember walking in the door of that room's chambers and looking at a desk that had absolutely nothing on it, looking into a file cabinet that had absolutely nothing in it, and sitting down in the chair and once again saying to myself, what have I gotten myself into this time? We had no orientation for new judges. It was really like being thrown into deep into the pool, and you had to figure it out. It was sink or swim. My first case involved a fellow who was charged with a speeding ticket. A police officer didn't appear. And so I looked at the ticket, I looked at the history, and I don't remember his name, but I said, I'm going to dismiss this case, and you're free to go and have a good day. And so he thanked me and he left out, and the prosecutor, a young lady by the name of Lynn Richardson, asked if she could approach the bench. I said, sure, come on. So she came up and she said, Judge, that was probably the right decision. And I'm not arguing that it wasn't. She said, but, he probably was speeding. And he probably should have said a little something to kind of make him think about whether or not he needed to adjust his behavior. And so I thanked her and I sat back and I thought, wow, that was deep advice for a speeding ticket, you know. And the deeper meaning really was that you had to have, even for a speeding ticket, a judicial philosophy about how you were going to approach the people who stood in front of you and what kind of impact you could have on their behavior and how you could have the opportunity to modify behavior depending on what you did or that you didn't do. And that you had to think about that all of the time with everybody who came in front of you. And all of that came out of that one speeding ticket, you know.
I think why he is so good in articulating the problem is because he's so sincere about recognizing it and wanting to find a solution to the problem. His ability to talk to an individual one-on-one, they're human beings, they have a story, they have a problem, and the court is the vehicle to help them solve their problems. Even though they may not recognize that at the very beginning. When somebody comes to court, it's with reluctance, but if they're treated with respect and there's reasonable alternatives to fees, or there's accommodations made or whatever, they realize that the court is not their enemy. And that is something that I think Judge Adrine is just wonderful at being able to explain to citizens.
The classic Ron Adrine way, and that is a recognition that maybe he and all of us, for a long time, were doing things in a way that wasn't, we thought we were being helpful, but his ability to recognize that something was happening right in front of us that we just couldn't see for the longest time. And with him, as soon as he has that vision, it isn't just to sit there and talk about it. He's one that rolls up his sleeves and actually does something about it.
Every time he gets an idea in his head, whatever, he'll call me up, Now, normally your friends call you up, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock. But if Ron get an idea, if it's 10, 11, 12, he'll give you a call, discuss it. I say, well, really, Ron, that sounds like a good idea, but we can discuss this tomorrow at a decent hour. Ron has always been a hard worker, and one of the things I liked about him when I was at Cleveland's court, I could call upon Ron to give him different jobs, tasks, or anything I really need, and he was the type of judge who would follow through. And once you delegated to him, you didn't have to worry about it because you knew that he was going to take care of the responsibility and do what he needed to be done.
You wouldn't have a mental health docket, you wouldn't have a veterans docket, you wouldn't have a drug docket if not for Judge Adrine and his work. He's passionate about making sure that people who want to have a second chance, can get a second chance.
Mr. Taylor, did you think you were coming to a basketball court today?
No, I didn't, sir.
Perhaps a tennis court?
No, I didn't, Your Honor.
You couldn't possibly have thought that you were properly attired to come to a court of law.
Well, I was watching my sister's children last night, and she
But
made me like...
before you went to go to see your sister's children, you knew that you had a court appearance that you had to make today.
Yes, sir.
So it wouldn't have been a real big deal for you to throw a pair of real pants and carry it over to your sister's house. Well, Mr. Jones, we don't deal with folks that are improperly dressed for court. So this matter be continued to the 19th of October. Come back properly dressed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
One of my first cases in his courtroom, and I remember, if I could, he leaned over his desk or his bench, and black robe on, stern, the chin, and basically gave it, this is my courtroom, this is how things are run, this is how it's going to happen. And, as the lawyer, just kind of sitting back thinking, I'm in trouble, man. I'm just not sure what to do. When my client was called, and you kind of saw the relaxed atmosphere a little bit more. I think he may have known that I was a new lawyer, kind of feeling my way through. probably guided my hand more than I knew that he did at the time to help me along my way on that first case. And that was the first appearance. I came back to him a couple more times with my client, and my client was given an opportunity for probation and some treatment as well. And that was my very first time that I met the Judge Ronald Adrine of the Cleveland Municipal Court. And so that was a lasting impression. It probably, I was never late to his courtroom in the 12 years. I was always timely, always respectful to him. And I believe that I received the same back from him as a judge.
When I got elected, he was one of the first people I came over and saw and sat down in chambers, and we talked. And he was like a mentor. I would have a problem with something that had happened in court procedurally, ask him, and he would normally give me something to read. He passed the wisdom along, and we've had that kind of relationship. He's very helpful. Just happened this week. He's still giving me paper.
This is like the third time we've had to have this conversation. You know, you've gone to jail, I've let you out of jail, I've put you back on probation, you've gone to jail, I've let you out of jail, and here we are again.
I was at a young age when I got all of those driving under suspensions.
But man, that's like telling me that, you know, I closed the door after the horse was out of the barn. Your failure to keep the schedule or your failure to perform any portion of any one of those 80 hours of community service work will bring you back before me as a probation violator. Probably the thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart is the court community service program. And when they had their luncheon recently and they talked about the millions of hours of community service work that has been done by individuals that courts from all over the county have sent through the program, and the positive impact that that work has done, not just for the folks who were the beneficiaries of the work, but also on the individuals that we sent. I don't know how it gets any better than that. There are things that I think that I've learned and that I've brought back home that were well worth the price of admission. And the most recent one is the concept of criminal justice system reform, and most particularly bail reform, where we are now focusing on making it so that we make sure that the right people stay in jail, and for people who are low-level offenders, who are low-income people, who are low-risk people, can wait for their case to take place in the comfort of their home instead of spending as little as 2 or 3 days in jail in a way that may cause their whole life to unravel. We need to be taken into consideration in a greater volume than we have been the people that are coming before us and their circumstance, because most of them are redeemable.
Everybody that comes in our door is a person that deserves 100% dignity and respect. That's something I learned from observing him on the bench.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for working with me over the course of the last 35 to almost 36 years. Thank you for helping me when I didn't know anything. When I first got here, and some people would probably say, you still don't know nothing. Okay. And especially those of you who have helped me to try to move the court in along a vision that I've had for where it should be, as opposed to where it is over the course of the last 8.5+ years. I want to say thank you to all of you for allowing me to do that.
I wanted to say thank you to Judge Adrine for our friendship for over 30 years. A common concern of all judges should be rehabilitation of defendants, reduction of recidivism, and community safety. He thinks about that every day. We talk about that every chance we can. And a culture in our court of helping people, looking out for people, was recognized by him being invited to the White House 2 times when President Obama invited him there for meetings. Not many people get recognized like that.
It's really been his passion for youth, his willingness to give back, to talk about what it takes to succeed, and he really does serve as a role model for youth and somebody for them to look up to, aspire to be. He's compassionate, he's smart, he's, well-spoken. He does it very modestly, very humbly, but he does it really well. And what I've seen, he has made a huge impact on people with those characteristics and with that attitude.
He's worked with the local bar associations to put together programs to ensure diversity in the profession. I remember years ago he worked to help put together a program so there'd be clerkships in the law firms here. And the law firms have been committed for a number of years to hire diverse candidates in the summer through that program. And also right now we have other kind of pipeline programs where high school students get placements in the summer in very meaningful opportunities. And he's been involved in that kind of work for years.
We're going to miss him quite a bit. I am going to miss him because of his contribution from the bench. But as I told him recently, I don't expect not to see him. I think that he will be very active in retirement, and I suspect that activity will be along the lines of being just continuing to contribute to his community.
I can't imagine the bench without Judge Adrine. His contributions are legendary, but he is on every committee. Anytime you ask him to do anything, he is always ready, willing, and able. Every encounter I have ever had with this man, you feel his warmth, his kindness, and his love. He is just an incredible judge, but more importantly, he's an incredible human being. We are all going to miss him, but I say that certainly hoping and praying that he will still be very involved in our community. Again, I can't imagine our community without him.
We are not going to let him go. He is too valuable. He is too good. We love him. Everything that I have learned good about being a judge, I've learned from Ron Adrine. I was with him on the VAWA committee for so many years, back to 1996. I learned everything about how to deal with domestic violence, stalking, and intimate partner offenses. He is just the most fabulous person I've ever known.
Judge Adrine has worked very hard to try to make the system better, but his heart's going to always still be here.
When I mention I'm from Cuyahoga County, I always get the comment, well, that's where Judge Ron Adrine's from, right? Is that the same county? And so just to know that he's well received throughout the county, throughout the state, and throughout the United States gives me great pride to know as my term as the administrative presiding judge, whether I continue in this for years to come, I'll always know that I'll continue to have Judge Adrine to be a model for me as my time here on the bench continues.
When I was a young judge and being so passionate and sometimes would get a little bit down about how slow things took or how challenging things might be to affect change. He would say to me, as you remember, progress is measured in inches. And it allowed me to, take a step back and recognize that, yes, if we can move things along during the course of our lives in a career little by little, there's going to be at some point in your life where you can look over your shoulder and see how far you came. Judge Adrine is going to need a set of binoculars to really see how far he has come, given from where the years that he spent. And the progress that we have collectively made as a result of his leadership.
Most of the time, I don't get a chance to hear from my success stories. My success stories leave out of here and they never come back. If I'm lucky, I'll run into them on the street and it always starts this way: "You don't remember me." And of course, that kind of tends to put you in your karate stance. But But so far, none of those stories that start "you don't remember me" have ever turned out badly. And then somebody will say, but 10 or 15 years ago, or now 20 or 30 years ago, I was in front of you and you did X, Y, or Z, or you said A, B, or C, and that changed my life. It's the reason why I get up in the morning, is to hear those occasional stories that cause me to understand that what we do here matters.